They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
Alright guys, the last video we uploaded where I talked about some playoff targets was maybe the best video this channel has ever seen in terms of the feedback, the encouraging comments, what y'all were telling me during the premiere as well. So I figured might as well come out here and might as well talk about some players that I would be worried about going into our fantasy basketball playoffs. And now I know that if you are new to fantasy basketball, this may not necessarily be something that you're used to. You don't necessarily have to worry about teams in fantasy football shutting down your certain players as you go down to the playoffs. But that's a real concern that we have here. And there are a couple of guys that we are going to talk about in this video that I've been getting questions with nonstop because people are worried about them sitting. So it's going to be a little bit iffy on if you're going to get the price point you want. But of course, I mean, you have 11 other guys in your league, so you can go out there and you can try to shop around. But that's it. If you have not already, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And more importantly, like I always say, if you want to join Premier Gang, if you want to come out, hang out during the live chat, and get your questions answered by myself and the other people that have their notifications on, hit that bell next to the subscribe button. That's going to notify you whenever we go live. And yeah, let's get into it. Our first player that we are going to be talking about has cooled down a lot since where he was at the beginning of the fantasy basketball season. And this is Malcolm Brogdon. Okay, so with Brogdon, I really did not expect us to see him really slow down to the point where he looked like he was going to be a top 24 player throughout the entire season. And I actually need to apologize to y'all because after we had the Victor Oladipo trade, we had a ton of people in the comment section, a ton of people during those live premieres asking me, Mason, should we be selling Malcolm Brogdon? Should we be selling him after this hot stretch? And I was looking at the situation going, no, if anything, I'm willing to go out there and buy him high. But since then, I mean, he has turned into almost a completely different player. And I know the Pacers are a team that's going to be in the hunt for the playoffs, so we don't necessarily need to worry about them just completely shutting him down. But actually, there's something else I'm a little bit worried about, and that is Caris LeVert is supposed to come back in mid-March. And now I know this is a date that right now they are saying March 11th, but it's definitely going to be pushed back further than that. I am not expecting a March 11th return. But what I am expecting with Malcolm Brogdon and Caris LeVert is that Caris LeVert makes it back in time for the playoff push by the Indiana Pacers. And I think that's going to cut in some minutes and cut in some touches in the rotation from Malcolm Brogdon. So if we can, I know you're going to be getting less than you would have if you tried to do it way back when I should have told you. I should have looked at Malcolm Brogdon saying, you know what, there's no way he keeps up this type of production with not only the points he's providing, but also the assist. I should have told you to sell then before he lost a decent amount of value, but it's better late than never. And a couple players that I think we could be targeting is, first off, I think it's always a great idea at this time in the season to try to take a couple of guys you're selling and not trade them one for one. Try to do a little bit more of packaging up. Try to possibly piece together Malcolm Brogdon and another guy that is definitely not at the end of your bench or anything, but someone that you're not relying on as a starter every single night he plays. Try to make a 2-for-1 package. That way you can get an upgrade in your starting lineup spot. Now, players that I'd be looking for, I know it would be very hard to pull off, but if you could get a 2-for-1 for Zach LaVine, I would love that. If that's unavailable to you, I am sure that you would be able to get Christian Wood at a nice discount right now. And you all know that I love Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to go along with it. So you have a ton of options with Malcolm Brogdon. Don't limit yourself. Try to be creative. Try to go out there and put some packages together. All right, so now our next player, I have so many different things to worry about here. And it's going to be Jeremy Grant. And this is another guy that, I mean, y'all were asking me, Mason, should I sell high? And I was saying no. And this was recently as well. This is just a few weeks ago. And now I am re-evaluating the situation after y'all are just nonstop telling me, Mason, we need to be worried about Jeremy Grant. And I'm starting to agree with y'all. I mean, we are going right now, and yes, Grant has a ridiculous ridiculous amount of minutes that he is playing. But a big part of that is the fact that the Pistons have had so many injuries to their guard position, where right now Killian Hayes, DeLon Wright, Frank Jackson, they have all been missing recent time. And I think, yes, obviously these are not players that we are worried about overtaking Jerami Grant, but due to their absence, we know that Jerami Grant's going to go from a guy that's possibly averaging 33 minutes a game up to 37, 38, and he's going to be asked to do a lot more with bringing the ball down the court as well as putting up shots. So that is something that we need to be worried about when those players come back one by one. If we see the Pistons scale back Jerami Grant, and another reason why we need to be worried is the fact that the Pistons are currently the worst team in the Eastern Conference. This team has no shot at the play-in tournament. They're not going to be playing for anything by the time we get to our fantasy basketball playoffs. And double check me on this. Make sure you're looking at your own league settings. But if I'm remembering correctly, I'm remembering that Jerami Grant also does not play the full 12 games over the playoff stretch. So there are about 3 different things pointing to the fact that Jerami Grant is probably someone that you want to be trying to move off of your roster. And now I know he's providing you a ton of production right now, so we're not going to be just completely scrambling to try to move him ASAP. But as we kind of near the trade deadline for our fantasy basketball leagues, that's about the time I think we want to be trying to move him. All right, so now our next player is someone else that this is embarrassing because I told y'all not to sell him a while ago, and y'all should have. But Victor Oladipo, I mean, right now the Rockets are 11-22. They're just not in a spot to make any moves in the Western Conference, and it's kind of funny because after they initially made the move for Victor Oladipo, and we knew that they had John Wall playing at a higher level, I mean, this team looked like they were going to be able to possibly make the play-in tournament even without James Harden. Well, everything has fallen apart since then. Victor Oladipo is a player that is going to be a free agent this upcoming season. And what I'm a little bit worried about is I'm worried that the Houston Rockets are going to be trying to move Victor Oladipo before the deadline. And if that happens, well, yes, he's going to be going to a team that is going to be playing for something in 2021. We know that that would be nice for him actually getting games played in the fantasy basketball playoffs. What I would be worried about is I would be worried about the amount of field goal attempts that he could have on a realistic playoff roster. I mean, think about him, just say in Boston, if they want to use the trade exception. Think about him possibly in Miami. I mean, there are a decent amount of playoff teams that could use Victor Oladipo, but none of those teams he's going to be asked to see the amount of minutes or see the amount of shots that he is currently being asked to in Houston. All right, so now our next player has been just severely disappointing all year, and you're not going to be able to get nearly what you want for him, but I am still saying I think we want to be moving him regardless. And this is Kemba Walker. Okay, so right now, at least the past few games, Kemba Walker has looked a little bit better. But if we look at him coming back from injury this year, we can obviously say that he's probably still dealing with it a little bit. And that's why we are looking at the numbers not being anything close to what we are expecting. But at the same time, we're looking at Kemba Walker and going, okay, I mean, he's averaging 30 minutes a game right now. And he is getting a decent amount of shots for how hilariously bad his efficiency has been. And Marcus Smart is coming back in mid-March. And while we know Marcus Smart is not going to be someone that is coming out to see a ton of shots, but he is someone that is a great defender for the Boston Celtics. So that's going to end up cutting in to the minutes for Kemba Walker. And he, at the very best, he is third fiddle on this team, and I think he's going to turn into fourth fiddle very soon. And if he continues with this efficiency, I mean, there's no way that you could ever consider starting Kemba Walker when Marcus Smart comes back. If his minutes dip down to just say 27, 26 a game, and he's fourth in the pecking order of guys taking their shots, and Kemba Walker has some of the league's worst efficiency marks up to date, I think there are just so many different things pointing to the fact that Kemba Walker probably not going to live up to where you drafted him this year, and I would rather just use him in a similar trade that I was talking about with Malcolm Brogdon, where you're not necessarily trading him 1-for-1, because if you try to trade him 1-for-1, you're not going to get a ton for him. But what you can do is you can throw him in a package, and someone's going to see the name. They're going to go, oh, Kemba Walker? Okay, we know that's coming with value. In reality, I'm unsure if that's the case. All right, so now our last player is going to be someone that y'all have been asking me about every single day in those premieres. I've been trying my best to avoid it, but I can't anymore. KarlAnthony Towns. Okay, yes, we are just going to have to throw in the towel here, because at first I did not want to tell y'all to even bother trying to sell him, because obviously, it's a concerning situation with the head coaching change, with this Timberwolves team looking like they are probably the worst run team in the entire NBA. And if you look at their future assets, I mean, it's going to be so hard for this team to turn it around, to the point where we are now asking ourselves, how much longer is KarlAnthony Towns going to be in Minnesota? How much longer is he going to put up with this situation? The Wolves right now are 7-28. They are playing for nothing this season. They may not even have their first round draft pick unless it ends up in the top 3. So I think we definitely need to be worried about KarlAnthony Towns being traded. I'm sorry, not being traded, but starting to sit games once we get to the fantasy basketball playoffs. And I thought everybody kind of knew this. I thought this was something that was on everyone's radar. But based on some of the KarlAnthony Towns trade questions y'all been asking me in the premiere as of late, where people kind of aren't even baking this in to the equation with how much we should be valuing KarlAnthony Towns, I think if you can go out in your league and just kind of feel around, just see what the market price is going to be. If you get anything close to the price point where you drafted him, I think you do it right away. I mean, if you could go, just say get a Zach LaVine. I know Zach LaVine is my go-to example, just because people in fantasy basketball have a hard time truly understanding his value, where he's right up there with the elite players in a Kevin Durant and a Kyrie Irving, but he doesn't have the name appeal. So I think with the KarlAnthony Towns, you can make a move like that quite easily, to be honest. And with Zach LaVine having a very nice playoff schedule, that's something I'd be very excited to do. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us a ton, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow.